Karyn, how's it going?
Hey, my friend. It is going well. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm okay for Monday. It's always
Yep.
Karyn Day, so it does
Yeah.
it does go slowly, but once it's here, it's great.
What
Yeah.
are
Well,
we
I'm
doing today?
what's that? Oh, what are we
What are we
doing?
doing today?
Well, I was just thinking, I was having a little I don't know, I was annoyed with my husband about something last week. And I remember like one of my things is always to try to pay attention more to the good things, the positive things about him rather than the negative. And then I kind of started thinking about how, like, what his love languages are. Because I thought, when we first started dating, I was really into the love languages by Gary Chapman. Do you remember that? Do you remember
hmm
him? Do you
Yes.
remember being into that with Bill at all?
No, and that's kind of part of what I wanted to talk to you about. Like all of these things, I'm not up on. I mean, of course, you'd have to be living under a rock to not have heard things like men are from Mars, women are from Venus,
Right.
the
Yeah.
five love language, the what's your personality type, the Myers-Briggs, or
Right.
what was that big one that was enneagrams that was going around like you'd have to live under a rock to not know what those are.
Yeah.
But I just never take the time to take the test and figure it out and all this. So I know about all of these things. And so I had to do, knowing we were going to talk about this today, I had to do a little bit of refreshing. So you're going to know more about this than me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably remember about me that when I finished graduate school, one of my dreams was to become a marriage and family LPC.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really into Dr. Phil back in the days when he was on Oprah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I followed him just constantly. I loved it so much. But that was just the beginning of my love for relationship stuff. And then when Pierre and I started dating, the poor guy, he was just drilled horribly by me about relationship stuff. And I do remember back then, it was probably after we had our first child, and I was really struggling. He was fine because he was going on with his career. I was the
Sure.
one who had quit my career to be home with Andrew, which was such a wonderful blessing. But I do remember we were going through some struggles, and reading that book helped us understand each other a little bit better. Like, for example, back then, I really needed words of affirmation because I went from being a school teacher who got lots of accolades and had, you know, I felt very proud of myself. I got a lot of compliments from my boss and from parents to just being, I shouldn't say just being a mother, but to being a mother. And nobody was saying, "Hey, babe, thanks for cleaning the toilets today," or "I love the way, you make our
Right.
child so happy." And so I remember my self-esteem just took a huge hit. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it wasn't just intellectual dumping of my self-esteem, it was also physical, because you know how it is for women.
Yeah.
Our bodies change, our life changes, everything changes. And so I did start thinking about how our love languages are very different now than they were back then. And so when I texted you, you said, "Yeah, that's a great idea because we can kind of see if other, women in their 50s and 40s can relate to this, you
Does it
know?"
change, right? Over time,
Right,
does it
right. Do
change?
you
Does the
ever
book
know?
talk about that at all, about how it will change, or is it just say, "Oh, this is your love
No.
language, it is set in stone"? Because maybe there needs to be a sequel that talks about how it changes if it doesn't have that.
Well, I did Google, and they have the seven, they're called the seven
I was going to ask you about that because I
new
Googled it
love
and
languages.
there's now seven. There used to be five and now there's seven. Did you know
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
I
Wow.
did. And they changed the way that they describe it, which I think is kind of interesting because you can take your words and you can blend them very easily and, make it all kind of fall under the same category. But what I'm most curious about is, even though you didn't do love languages with Bill, do you know at all, looking back, if you had done that? First of all, you know what the five love languages are by Gary Chapman?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I do. And I just did a little bit of surveying for Bill and I today in
Okay.
preparation for this because you know me.
Yeah.
If I'm
I do
doing
your
something, I
research.
have to do it right. So I got to research it.
Yeah.
My perfectionism is coming out. And so I said, well, I don't know a ton about this, so I have to. And it had been a while, that I have really
Yeah.
thought about it. So yes, I do know what they are, but maybe for our listeners, I think it would be a good idea to just go through the five
Yes.
and talk about the two that got added on.
Yeah. I like that. So the the ones by, Gary Chapman, the original ones were words of affirmation, actions, or I'm sorry, yeah, actions, which is I think back then though they called it service, like words of service
Yeah,
or
that's what I see. I saw it as acts of
um
service or
acts of service
actions.
or
Okay.
actions, gifts, touch, and quality time. And I want to say that quality time is the one thing that I want to hone in on the most right now, because that's really what got me thinking about this topic today. But before we do that, I'll briefly jump over to what the new words are. The new, I guess you would call them the adjectives, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
activity, appreciation, emotional, financial, intellectual, physical, and practical. So,
Interesting.
And obviously you could blend those together. I can see like physical is the same as, what's different is practical. Do you have a
Yeah.
spouse?
So I saw something very similar, but they used words that were a little bit different. And so I'm assuming the word practical on the list that I looked at, it called that intellectual, which I think is the same thing. So
Yeah.
sometimes they're using words that are similar. So I got to write that down. So
Yeah.
for
Well, intellectual
practical
was on the no, see, the intellectual of the seven is
is
actually
different.
in that list. Yeah, it's
Interesting.
activity, appreciation, emotion, financial, intellectual, physical, and practical.
Okay.
And
All right. I'm going
so,
to give you the list that I saw
yeah, I want to hear your
because it's
list.
a little bit different than
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
And it had seven of them.
Okay.
All right. Let me just pull it up. Okay. So it had, let's see, this was really funny. It was describing it like tacos.
Okay.
It was like if you want to, this is how you understand it, and it was explaining it through the world of tacos. And
Okay.
so this is the seven love languages, and they said, and again, I'm sure they all correspond. So it said acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, physical touch, intellectual, and emotional. And that's what they call
So
the
emotional got
seven
added.
love
Hmm.
language. So they all probably have some correspondence to each other. It's interesting how people took the Gary Chapman book, the five that were
Yeah.
really pretty set, and
Hmm.
now they've kind of branched out. There's seven, and they're calling them different things, but I bet they all kind of mean the same thing. They're just
Yeah.
using different words.
I
Yeah.
think we could definitely do a Venn diagram and make them somehow all
But just
blend
to kind of
together
wrap
well.
up this
Yeah.
taco thing here, let me just
Yeah,
give
let's hear
you
that.
a couple of examples. So it does all of this. It blends it through all through the lens of tacos. And so for receiving gifts, it says basically you're saying to the person, here's a taco. Like I'm giving you a gift. Here's a taco. And so physical touches, let me hold you like a taco.
Ah,
This just made me laugh.
interesting.
Acts of service is I made you some tacos.
Uh-huh.
Words
Okay.
of affirmation would be something like your tacos are delicious. So it's interesting how they just tried to
Hmm.
simplify it but
I
keep it
love that.
in the word of tacos. So I thought I just that made
Yeah.
me chuckle because I thought, oh well,
It's
that's just
really
having a
cute.
little fun with it.
Wait, what about the affection? What did you
Let's
kiss a taco?
see. So
Do you want to,
affection would that be quality time or would that be
what with the
physical?
taco? Like, how did they do the taco for affection?
Yeah,
For,
there isn't an affection for this one.
oh, there's not.
So there's
Okay.
physical touch, which is let me hold you
Oh,
like a taco.
oh,
There's
yes, yes, yes.
emotional, which is thanks for being with me. I was scared there would be no more tacos.
Okay.
So I just thought that was really cute. That just made me laugh.
Y- You know, um, I was talking to my son and his new girlfriend about this yesterday. I told them we were going to do this on our podcast. And the one thing I have noticed is that the young people are just as aware of the five love languages as I was when I was their age. So
Interesting.
it is neat how it has stayed around. And they talked a little bit about the gratitude one, the words of affirmation, and how so much of that, the gratitude and compliments. And so he told me, because I know that love languages can be branched out to your children, it can be branched out to
Right.
maybe coworkers. There's so many different ways it can be branched out. But he said he has a boss who's always like incredibly complimentary. He said almost like overly complimentary, like to the point of like, good job, great. Like all you have to do is like hand him a piece of paper and he's like, great job, you know. So, and it kind of got me
Oh.
thinking. I was like, I do remember, as a teacher, we had to be very positive with our students, but more specifically about being positive was being very specific and like honing in on exactly what it is that we were complimenting so that it came across as sincere
Hmm.
and noticed, like it was noticed, for example. So I
Right.
think I think that can fall into the husband wife category really well too, that like you want your spouse, your significant other, maybe to notice things in a way that is deeper and more microscopic than great job, hon, thanks. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that
Yeah.
make sense to you?
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
have you ever
Get a little
needed
more
words of affirmation?
specific.
Yeah, exactly.
No. No.
You've never needed them. Okay, what
Nope.
about Bill?
Yes, 100,000 million%. So he went through this today, and because I mean, I know way back when I probably took the quiz, I just didn't keep up with what my answers were. But he
Yeah.
had never done anything like that. But I knew, looking at it, I just knew that was one for him. And he confirmed that, yes, words of affirmation are big for
Uh-huh.
him. I like to think of myself as gray with so many things, meaning that I can see both sides of things
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I can put myself in different people's shoes and situations.
Yeah.
But I'm probably more black and white because some of these acts of love, these love languages, they either completely attract me or they completely repel me. And
Uh-huh.
words of affirmation completely repels me. Like I
So,
really dislike it. Like Bill knows I really dislike it. So he doesn't do it.
well, but that's the whole idea behind love languages is that that's Bill's love language, which, and because it's not yours, you don't need that. So you're less likely to do that for him, but that's what he
Yes.
wants. Right? Did you guys talk
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, so I do it and I really dislike it. It feels so insincere when I do it. It
Uh,
feels just gross. Like
Okay.
it like pat you on the head. Good job. Like, oh, like there's
Okay.
nothing I dislike more. Even if it's good job for mowing the lawn or like I really, yeah, I have a hard time
But
with
is
it. But
that really what
I
he
know
wants?
he needs it, and so I do it.
But does he want it like that though, or does he want
Of
it?
course I don't say it like that, but that's what I'm
He
feeling
just
on the
wants you to
inside.
notice. He wants you to
Yeah.
notice that maybe he's super tired, but he mowed the lawn anyway, or
Right.
something like that.
Right,
Okay.
right. He needs that.
Whereas you could care
I
less about that for yourself.
not only do I care less, but don't do it because it
Yeah.
really will bother me if you do.
Okay. So the funny
Yeah.
thing about this is that I feel the same way right now. Like, for example, I would say as a young mother, we're just on the physical spectrum about myself, is I never felt, especially once I got pregnant and put weight on, I never felt like I was attractive anymore. And I would say that I don't know that my husband did a great job of making me feel attractive either, I would say, to the point where when I look back at pictures of myself, I'm mad that I didn't appreciate myself more back then because I think now that I'm getting older, I wish I would have been more appreciative of that. So I kind of told him this. I'm like, um, did you realize that this is kind of how it was, in our marriage? And maybe it wouldn't have mattered if he said anything to me ever, right? Because that was just my self-esteem back then. But so now he goes like a little overboard with it to the point
Ah,
where,
gotcha.
honey, I know you're listening and I'm sorry, but I've told him, I'm like, sometimes it comes across as insincere and too much. And he
Right.
swears it's sincere. He swears it is. He swears he feels it. But my point is that Karyn is I'm like you now. I don't want compliments. I don't need them anymore. I've kind of have evolved the way I want to.
Hmm.
And I've baked, as Oprah would say. I've been baking. And so yeah, I think words of affirmation right now are for me like, oh, so isn't
That's
that funny?
interesting.
Hmm.
You and I are a sample of two, but I feel
Hmm.
exactly the same way. Back
Yeah.
when I was younger, I needed that approval, not just
Yeah.
from my spouse, but from my parents, my
Okay.
brothers, my coworkers, anybody, everybody. And I don't need that anymore. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm so comfortable in my decisions and I don't need your approval. And so that love language just has kind of gone out the window for me and it just gets more
Mhm.
and more useless to me. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting. I wonder
I,
if our
yeah.
listeners feel the same way as you're getting older and
I
you get more comfortable in your
I
skin.
know. I would love to poll them. I would love
Yeah.
to poll them about that. The other love language that used to be mine, and he and I both shared it, was quality time. Do you remember? So what? Tell me what you know
Oh,
about
that's
quality time and what you think of
interesting.
it. Okay, that was
Okay,
our
so
other my other one.
for you, that's one that you used to be important and isn't anymore, or vice versa.
Okay, so it's still important, but what happened with us? Okay, so like when you're a young mother and you're home with your children and your husband's at work all the time, the quality time is having time together without the children, I think. Going
Yeah.
on dates. They say you should go on
And it's
dates.
so important.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I would say back then we agreed with each other that quality time was very important for our marriage. I think anybody would agree with that. Like they preach that till the cows come home, that you never let your children come before your
Right.
marriage,
Right.
things like that. So now, though, I've been analyzing quality time a lot more because I don't think that he and I agree what quality time is anymore. And so I think this is part of the evolution of the woman, maybe. I kind of believe, and I remember this from my dad too. I can remember my dad would just be very happy sitting in a room with all his kids, being a listener. For him, that was quality time. He was just so
Hmm.
happy just hanging out with us, even if he didn't say a word to us, even though he would, but like he just was a quiet man, an
Yeah.
observer. Whereas my mom, for her quality time, would have been having like a really deep discussion with somebody, which is how I am too. Now,
Right.
I don't want a lot of it, but I do need that. And so I've noticed that with my husband and I through the years because we work together and we live together, that I don't consider that quality time, whereas
Right.
he, like, I think
Oh,
he
that's
thinks because we're
interesting.
together all the time, but
That's
I would
quality
just
time.
right.
Yes.
I think, and he and I talk about this. I think quality time is I mean, maybe my higher maintenance now, Karyn, because for me, quality time isn't just sitting in a room with my husband. He's on his phone and I'm on my phone. No, 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 no.
Right.
I want to have like conversation with him. I want to have a discussion about something. I'm terrible. I'm poor guy. He has this woman who like really wants to have a conversation with him every once in a while. so so the quality time as a 50-year-old woman is very different than a young mother.
Yeah. Oh,
So what about you?
absolutely. So what you're saying is that for some of these, quality time for sure, and maybe there's others we can dive into and say,
Hmm.
hey, this might not mean what it means to you. It might mean something different to me. And
Right.
so I feel that's really true. Like you
Hmm.
actually, if you talk about these with your partner, you probably need to say, what does that actually look like and mean to you? Because
Yeah.
Pierre might say to you, well, we have quality time. We spend
Oh,
all day, all night
absolutely.
together. And
Absolutely.
then you're like, no, honey, I mean a date. I mean hanging out. I mean spending time together talking. That's quality time. So it sounds like it's really important to make sure that we quantify what these things mean. So that's another one that I
Mhm.
haven't thought about. I'm so glad you brought this topic up because I just haven't thought about the fact that these things have changed for me. And in fact, before we talked, I was ready to say to you, I don't think things have really changed for me.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
talking about it and bringing it up, it
Yeah.
really makes me think way back when, what was important to me? Because sometimes it's hard to remember, but now that you mention it, yeah, that's absolutely changed because I was a stay-at-home mom like you, and I
Uh-huh.
was in kid world all day, and I just needed to me quality time meant adult time away from the kids. It
Mhm.
meant friend time. It meant spouse time. It just meant
Yeah.
time doing something other than what I did all day,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that anymore to me because it's not difficult to have time away from the kids. Now quality time might be actually spending time with the kids because they don't all live here and I don't get to spend as much time with them as I would want. And same with my husband. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, that might be more important to me than it used to be. And in a different, but not just that, but just in a different way. Quality time means something's
Yeah.
different to me than it did when I was younger and a young
Exactly. It really
mom.
does. For example, when we go travel to see one of our kids now, because they don't all live near us, that is just so special because it's where it used to be everybody around the dinner table messing up the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
eating and then taking off,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, which is, I would say, was one of my husband's favorite things about family. And I love that too about him. But now the quality time with our kids is we will go visit them and
Right.
truly like get to know their lives and their surroundings. And I just find that to be like such an amazing phase in my
Yeah.
life.
I'm
It
smiling,
excites me to
laughing
no end.
because when we had littles, quality time would be like stealing 5 minutes away in the bathroom by ourselves.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, I've just got to get away. Calgon, take me away.
Yes,
And
exactly.
now quality time is going to see them
Yeah.
or making a plan with your partner to have a
Yeah.
quality talk when, you just didn't want to even do that. You just wanted to go to sleep at the end of the night. You weren't
Hmm.
ready to have an intellectual conversation, but it's like growing older and having the
Hmm.
kids leave and flourish and blossom on their own now leaves us some space
Hmm.
to have those conversations, to like open up space in our brain for those kind of
Yeah.
conversations again.
Yeah.
This
Exactly.
really needs to be a book.
I know,
Like
right?
Love Languages Over 50. It
Yeah.
really needs to be a book
Yeah.
because it really changes. That's crazy. Oh, what a great topic.
It is fun. And so the other thing that I think has evolved and changed too is the touch, right?
Okay.
When you're first, there's lots of documentation about marriages and when people first, meet each other, they fall in love in this
Sure.
infatuation phase, and then that infatuation phase slowly dies and you get into like a deeper type of love and things like that. But you're still, as a woman, you're still like trying really hard to be with your husband because you don't want him to go cheat on you. So you better do something. So, but I think as we get older, and I know there's a lot of women who would agree with me, affection and intimacy is really at the forefront more than anything else. Hugs, hand holding, just little kisses and things like that. So that's changed for me as well. I
Yeah.
can't say it's changed for my husband because a man is a man, but for me, it definitely what has changed is me like, convincing him that that is a very important part of our relationship. Um, that we do still have those types of things. And yeah, so I think that's changed a lot too.
I
So
totally agree. 100%.
yeah,
That
yeah,
changes, especially for women as well. Maybe not for
right.
men as much. I'm not sure. I can only
I
speak
don't
for women,
know.
but
It
and
might, it
really
might
only
change for men
me, but
too. Well, I mean, their testosterone levels get lower. Let's be
That's
honest. You know,
true.
you
That's true.
can't.
So it probably does change for them too.
I think
Yeah.
it probably does, you know, and then I
Yeah.
think they also lower their expectations a little bit too because they know, you know, they just have learned to kind of accommodate us where we're at a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I do think that when we're younger, we talk about, I don't know, Karen, I remember you and I used to talk about sex all the time with our friends to the point where one of our
Mm-hmm.
friends was like, enough, you know, and so I think that there's that pressure too when you're a younger woman, you know, like I can remember watching the Dr. Phil show one day and they said that the average couple, you know, has intercourse 2.5 times a week, you know, and like you're always comparing yourself to what like
Sure.
should be done or whatever. And I'm sorry, but at my age, I don't worry about that as much. What about you?
Yeah, no, I don't either. I don't think about like how many times this week. You know what I mean? It's just not
Yeah.
something that I think about.
It's more
And
like
just
how many
the
times this
whole
year?
and just the whole idea of intimacy changes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know
It
what
does
I'm
change, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like
So,
I want to cuddle and snuggle and I want to hold hands and I want to kiss, but then I want
mhm.
my own space. Give me my own space.
I know, but
Like
then from a,
we would go to bed spooning every night for years and years and years
yeah,
and years. And
right.
now I'm like, you know what, dude? I just need a bigger bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but see, here's the thing now, Karen, kind of going back to the whole point of love languages is that, you know, you and I are talking very much about like how it's different for us, whereas we still have to remain cognizant of what is still important to them. And
Right.
that is something that I have to work at, you know, remembering that my intimacy isn't his intimacy. So it is really I think it's a juggling act, honestly.
It is
So
to make sure that you get your needs met
mhm,
and make sure that you meet your partner's needs, which may
mhm.
be completely opposite of each other.
Yeah,
And
right. Unless you
it
have a good discussion about it with him,
right.
you
And I don't
know?
know about you, but
So
Bill and I, our love languages are we don't share any in common. The ones that are
really?
important to me are not important. No, they're completely
Wow.
different. So, and it's interesting because we've kind of been doing this, but not naming it as much. But I like, because like I said, he knew mine, I knew his,
Okay.
but we're not so, we just don't talk about it all the time. But they're completely different. And so making sure that you get your needs met and meeting your partner's needs, that's a challenge when you have completely different ideas of what love means to you.
So what are your love languages?
So you can help me translate into what your list is, but
Okay.
they're very similar. So one is you mentioned actions, which I think
Uh-huh.
is like acts of service.
Acts of service.
So
Hmm.
I have two, I actually have four if you're counting the seven, but I
Okay.
really have two top ones.
Okay.
So acts of service is one of them, and then receiving gifts is another one. And I feel a little bit like less than saying that because people feel like that's shallow, but so that's why I feel like I have to quantify. Bill has never bought me, not never, but because I've always said no. Like, I don't want jewelry. I don't want you to buy me a car. It's nothing like that. I
Right.
saw this flower in the ground and I picked it because I thought of you when I saw it. I saw
Oh,
this card and it made me think of you. It is the little things, and it's
wow.
not on a birthday or Mother's Day or Christmas. It is the just
Yeah.
because.
Yeah.
It's that. Those are the kind of gifts that I absolutely love. And they may have
Mhm.
zero monetary value. It's not about that. It's about, I thought of you. I saw this and I thought of
Uh-huh.
you. And
Uh-huh.
Bill knows this. And that's why, and you might remember this, like every year on Mother's Day, our girlfriend group will text each other and say, "What did you do? How was your Mother's Day?" We always do that with each other.
Yeah.
And I will always tell you guys, this is what my family did for me because they know that they combine the acts of service with the receiving gifts part of things.
Uh-huh.
And I have the best Mother's Day every year. And they put so much thought and effort into it. And it's so sweet. And it makes my whole year because those are my
Oh my
two
gosh.
love languages. Now, I have a couple other ones that the taco list, I'm using air quotes
Yeah.
there, that the taco list said, and those would be emotional and intellectual. And I
Okay.
see that as And I did not have emotional on my list at first, but when I talked to Bill, he said, no, actually, you are, because you'll tell me that it's really important that I'm emotionally available for you. Like I tell him
Mhm,
that a lot. Like, I
mhm,
need to tell you about this. And because,
mhm.
okay,
To be
so
present.
Bill and I have this thing where, and this is so cliche. I come to him with a problem and he wants to fix it, but I don't
Mhm,
want him to fix my problem. I mean,
mhm,
he in his mind, he's thinking, I'm the man, I'm the supporter, I'm going to help her with this problem. That's not what I want. I just want him to say, I see you, I hear you, I understand, and I am there for you. That's what I want to hear. So to me, that's what emotional means. That means he's emotionally available to me, and that's important to me. And then the last one on now, what would that be called on your list? Was there one that would equate to that?
I think that would fall under, I think actions because
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So
words
that's
of
different
or
than an
service. Like
acts of
I think it's
service.
because because I think it's taking the time, one to listen and two, I truly believe, and I'm only speaking about this from my sweet husband's what he's taught me is the man who wants to solve the problem. I know that that is kind of a man thing, but I think it's also in my husband's case, maybe his way of like closing this down more quickly.
Ah,
Okay, let's get to the
maybe.
solution. And what I would consider to fall under that, like to piggyback on what you're saying, is that yeah, having that like emotional availability to be present, to sit there and listen, and to not do all the talking, but
Mm-hmm.
just like
Just
truly,
listen.
like you said, to truly hear you
Yeah.
is, I think that is an action,
Okay.
you know?
So I would say that. And then
I mean,
lastly,
it's not the same as like washing the dishes for you without you
it's a
asking. I
different,
mean, but it's a different
right.
time.
It's a different
Yeah.
type. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then the last one in my list, it was called intellectual, which is those intellectually stimulating kind of conversations, like the ones I could not have when I was a young mother and I just wanted to go to sleep when my
Hmm.
husband got home because I was probably still in my pajamas when he got home
Yeah.
from work and I was just like, here,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, now I want to have more of those conversations.
Hmm.
So I would say actions or acts of service and receiving gifts would be the top two for me, but then the emotional, intellectual are important
Hmm.
as well,
Yeah.
but maybe to a lesser degree. What are your
Hmm.
top ones?
Um, you know, let's see. I don't, okay, so I would say I definitely really need a hug and a touch and a smile and good listening. I think that all kind of falls under affection,
Mm-hmm.
the one
Sure.
that's called what's that one called? Oh, words. No, not words. That one would fall under, what would that fall under? Maybe these five love languages don't fit me anymore.
Interesting.
No, the touch one.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
affection one. Okay.
affection. Yeah,
So,
so affection could be physical as well. Yeah, that
yeah,
makes
like
sense.
I like a hug. I feel like hugs and smiles bring endorphins, that hormone that we need to, lift our mood and things like that. So I definitely need that. And I would say that I need quality time, but I really need the quality time to truly be quality, not quantity. And so that is one of the
Hmm.
things I'm working on right now. I think the problem for us is we're just not at that phase yet in our life where we can. I know that's an excuse because everybody should make that happen, but and we do get quality time, we just don't get it as often. Maybe I want more. I want quantity, so the order's different. Like I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think in this
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
I want quality time, but I want it more often. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
Whereas right now we have quantity and much less quality. So I just kind of
gotcha.
did a little bit of a flip. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. 100%.
So
Yeah, I
yeah.
like that.
So, and I'm working on something with my husband. This is just meant to be a joke along these lines. We have a funny little thing where I tell him that he listens to what I say 50% of the time. 50% of the time, he hears 50% of what I say. and responds 50% of the time. And it's kind of a joke, but it also has started making me realize that that's not something I want my daughter to think is normal. And so I started talking to him about, I had a real serious conversation with him about it. And just, we kind of got to the nitty gritty of like why he can't satisfy me in that way, the way I need him to, like a can't versus won't thing. And like, is it you can't or you won't? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, we kind of talked about his upbringing and how his parents, what his one parent it was just talks and talks and talks and doesn't listen ever. And then the other parent kind of does the same thing. It's not conversational. I can tell you his parents don't know anything about me or what I've ever done in my life. That's just the way he grew up. And so he does have that, but it's not an excuse anymore because he's been with me for over 25 years. So I joked with him and I said, honey, I think I'm going to write you an IHP. Maybe that'll help, us. And he's like, what's an IHP? And I was like, well, and when I was a teacher, my students who had trouble in the classroom had an individualized education plan, an IEP. But I think for you, we're going to do an IHP, an individualized husband plan. And so
Oh, I
he
like
laughed
it.
about it. He's a
I
good
like it.
he's a good sport, and so now that's one of the things we are working on. Believe it or not, like
Wow.
this whole thing is like a constant. You
Yes.
turn 50, you're an
Yep.
empty nester. It doesn't get easier just because like it's just a constant work in
Exactly.
progress.
Always.
So
Probably even when you're married and you're in your 80s, you're still working on it, and
you
there's some
do,
other hurdle. I don't think it's ever something you can just say, "Oh, chick, wash
right,
that, our hands of that. We're done.
right.
We've got the perfect marriage. No more working on it." I don't think that would ever happen.
No, no,
Yeah.
and the one thing that you have to be able to have, though, that I think is, envelops both the five and the seven is that willingness and that ability to communicate with each other about that. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you don't have that with each other, none of those other things are going to matter,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
So,
For sure. Yes. And it's
but,
it's really about communicating it. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's so interesting how I came into this conversation thinking that I've had these love languages forever.
Yeah.
And then realizing, I guess mine have changed over time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
thinking, oh wow, somebody needs to write a book on this. It's that interesting, that
It is.
poignant.
It is. And I think you're brilliant because when I told you that I wanted to do this, you were kind of like, how does that fit into what we do here for women? And you're the one who's like put it all together and said, yeah, as women who have been married all these years, or maybe it's a woman in her 50s and she is newly married, whatever it is, whatever the situation
Right.
is,
Right.
we have evolved. And these things that used to work for us, you need to self-analyze
Right.
and talk to your person about it and make sure that you guys are on the same page.
Yep. And just knowing you're
So,
going to evolve with this, it's not going to
hmm
stay static. If you did this back when you were 25, it's time to revisit it. And
hmm
because maybe you don't know, like me, maybe you don't know what your love languages are, and you got to
yeah,
really figure it out. What fits for me now and what fits for my partner now? Because you better believe if you're changing, your partner's changing too.
hmm absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think the question I would like to have out there for our listeners, and I know they can respond in the comments on YouTube very easily if they don't want to email us, is have you and your spouse ever talked about love languages? If so, maybe they can tell us how it's changed and or are they planning to do it again after listening to us?
Yeah. Yeah. How has
So
it
I would
changed?
love to be able to read what some of our listeners have to say about it.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, comment right below so that we can see what's going on, what's changed with your love languages. I love how Pam talked about the quality time changing as well as the words of affirmation changing. Does that fit for you? I would love to know because to
Hmm
me, it sounds like something that would be pretty similar for most women who are now getting older and more secure in their skin. So I would love to hear that. And if you're
Yeah.
listening on the pod, then just shoot us an email and let us know. It's pamkarenpod PamKaryn@gmail.com, PamKaryn@gmail.com. And yeah, send us an email and let us know. Really
Yeah,
cool conversation.
and let us know if you want us to help you make an IHP for your husband. I
There you
actually do have
go.
experience with making IEPs, so I could probably help someone with an IHP.
Have you actually created this IHP?
Well, we not on
Not
paper,
on
but
paper. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I did say, because I remember when I was a BSc, you had to pick one specific goal and you had to say, I will do this in this particular quantity 80% of the time. And that was the one goal that the children would work towards, you know.
Right, right.
So with my husband, I said, what I need from you is to not listen to me 50% of the time, start listening to me all the time and
Yeah.
responding to
And
me all the time.
maybe say to you, you know what, honey, right now, I don't have the bandwidth for this. Like, I don't know if he does that or not, but I think it's really important for your spouse to be able to say to you, I can't do this right now. Give me 5 minutes. I got to go take a shower. I just need to
Yeah.
decompress. And then let's come back to this. And then you'll be all mine, right? I will be all yours,
You're
whatever the word
100%
is.
right.
Yeah.
You're 100%
Yeah.
right. Because I can guarantee that I've evaluated that myself. Okay, he's busy. He's looking, he's researching something. I'm not going to bug him right now.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
have to
so
pick
like
your
if
timing.
right. And so I'm thinking to myself, if take all this time to try to pick the right time to talk to him versus to just talk to myself at the time, then yeah, he certainly can give me the courtesy of communicating to me that he just needs to
Yep.
step away for a few minutes emotionally.
Communication and
Right.
just make doing what you need to do to get your needs
Yeah.
met. Yeah,
Yes.
and being willing to make sure you meet your partner's needs. And that
Mhm.
again, that all goes back to communication. The way I'm picturing it right now is it's like a circle with communication at the
Yeah.
top, communication at the bottom, and then your needs and his needs or your partner's needs, whatever sex
Mhm.
you are. Yeah, on the sides. So it's like a circle,
Yeah.
right?
I
That's
like
kind
that
of how I
visual.
picture it.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And then you can maybe stick a Venn diagram in there too and find where you
Hmm.
overlap and things like that.
There you go.
So, but well, thanks for being willing to share this with me, even though I
This
know it
was fun.
wasn't.
I like this
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. Light
So,
but important.
yeah. Yeah. I like that. So we'll have to think of what we're going to do next time, right?
We've talked about it. I don't know if we're ready to share it yet. There's somebody we've talked about interviewing. I don't know if we can do that next time, but we'll figure out a good topic for next time and we'll be back with you on the
Yeah.
Loneliness Project.
Yes. And thank you for helping us to feel less lonely tonight.
There you go. Yep, that's what it's all about. All right, my
Yes.
friend.
Okay. Okay.
Good chatting with
Bye.
you. Okay, bye.
Okay. You too. Bye.